In most, if not all applications, we have one or more settings that can impact how the application operates. For example, our application may use a mail server to send emails. So it needs to know the address of the mail server, as well as the username and password. As a best practice, we should not store these settings in the code. Instead, we store them in a configuration file, and that's where our web.config comes into the picture. So here in web.config, we have this section called App Settings, where we can store application settings using key value pairs. By default, we have 4 settings here, which are basically there because of the legacy stuff in ASP.NET MVC and how it has evolved from version 1 to version 5. For example, we have settings for enabling client-side validation or unobtrusive JavaScript. You don't really need to touch any of this stuff as they're used internally by the MVC framework, so just leave them the way they are. Now let me show you a real-world example of using application settings. Earlier, we added this app ID and secret for Facebook authentication. These values are hard-coded here, and that's not a good thing. So I'm going to move them to application settings. Back in web.config, I'm going to add a couple of keys. Facebook app ID. Set it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Duplicate Facebook app secret. And set it to A, B, C, D, E. Now back in our startup class, to read the application settings, we use the configuration manager class, which is defined in system.configuration. So you need to import this namespace on the top. This class has a bunch of static properties and methods. Most of the time, we work with app settings or connection strings. So app settings. Now this is like a dictionary. So we can provide a string indexer. Facebook app ID. And similarly, Facebook app secret. Now in this case, both these values we're interested in are strings. But if you want to store numeric or Boolean values or date times in application settings, you need to convert them to the corresponding type because app settings always returns a string. So this is basically how we work with application settings. Now let's take this to the next level. Back in web.config, I'm going to add another setting, mail server. This is just for demonstration. We are not going to send emails. And I set this to dev-smtp.vidly.com. Now let's say in our testing environment, we want to use a different mail server. That's where our build configurations come into the picture. So we go to Solution Explorer, expand web.config, open web.testing.config. Now here, we add the app settings section. Now I'm going to go back to the original web.config, copy this setting, back here, and paste it. Now, if I leave it like this, it's not going to overwrite the setting in the original web.config. We need to apply a transformation. And for that, I'm going to borrow this line from connection string section. So this transformation says, when you find an element with the same name attribute, set all the other attributes based on the values in this file. Now I'm going to change this to key because here we're using key. With this transformation, an application setting in this file with the same key will overwrite the one in the parent web.config. Now let me show you a technique. We can always preview the output of this transformation. So in Solution Explorer, right-click web.testing.config and select Preview Transform. So on the left, we have the original web.config, and on the right side, we have the transformed web.config, which is for the testing environment. You can see we have 2 changes here. One is for the default connection. If we scroll to the right, look, this value, the connection string on the left side, is replaced with the one on the right side. We also have another change, and that's for the compilation section. So debug equals true is removed. But note that our application setting, mail server, is the same. It's not changed. So we go back to our web.testing.config and change this value to test-smtp. Now save We have to close the preview window and open it again. There you go. Now we can see our mail server setting in the testing environment equals this value. So this is how we work with application settings. In the next lecture, I will talk about securing application settings.